Hello. Saturday, May the 20th, 1944. Mrs. Turner has come to stay, Barry's mum. She likes us to call her Ivy. Last Tuesday she just turned up out of the blue to give Barry a nice birthday surprise, she said. That's in 2 days' time. She gave him a surprise, all right. She gave us all a surprise. We got back from school and there she was sitting with Mum at the kitchen table, her suitcase beside her. She hugged Barry so tight and for so long that I thought his eyes might pop out, and she pinched his cheek, which I could see he didn't like at all. She's got lots of powder on her face and bright scarlet lipstick, which Barry's always wiping off his face after she kisses him, and that's very often. And her eyebrows are penciled on, not real, just like Marlene Dietrich in the films, Mum says. Barry hasn't said much since she's been here, nor has anyone else. No one can get a word in edgeways. His mum never stops talking. She could talk the hind legs off a donkey, that's what Grandfather says, and she smokes all the time too. Like a chimney, Grandfather says that too. Ivy's nice though. I like her. There's a picture of her there. Lots of people used to smoke in those days because they didn't realise it was bad for you. She came with presents for everyone and told us again and again how kind we'd be to look after Barry for her. All through supper tonight she told us story after story about the Blitz in London, about the air raid sirens running to the shelters and sleeping nights down in the underground stations. Do you remember the assemblies about that? She talks in towny accent just like Barry does, only a lot louder and for a lot longer. She's very proud of her big red London bus. I'm telling you, ain't nothing going to stop my number 74 from getting where she's going, she said this evening. Holes in the road, busted bridges, tumble down houses. They can send over all the hexploding doodahs they want. Will they stop my bus from getting where it's going? Not blooming likely, that's what I say. Barry tries to stop her talking from time to time, but it's no use. In the end, he just goes out and lets her get on with it. He spends even more time now out on the farm with Grandfather and Uncle George. Barry's mum makes no bones about it. She doesn't like the country one little bit, and farms in particular. Smelly places, all that mud, all them cows, and the blooming birds waking you up in the morning. Yesterday she was washing up at the sink with Mum after supper, when all at once she burst into tears. What is it? Mum asked, putting her arm round her. It's all that green, she said, pointing out of the window. It's just green everywhere, and there's no buildings. It's so empty. I hate green. I don't know why, I just hate it. She hardly ever goes out, just stays in the kitchen smoking and drinking tea. Mum likes her a lot because she's good company for her and because Barry's mum loves to help out. She likes to be busy fetching and carrying, scrubbing floors, ironing and polishing. She's blackleaded Uncle George's stove for him, so he's happy too. Barry never actually says he wants her to go home, but I can feel he does. I don't think he's ashamed of her exactly, but you can tell he's uncomfortable with her around. He either wants to be at home with her in London or down here with us, but not both. That's what I think anyway. One good thing is that she's always teasing Uncle George, and no one else dares to do that, about the holes in the elbows of his jacket, about how scruffy he looks. She sat him down a couple of days ago and cut his hair for him. She mended his jacket for him, and when Uncle George grumbles on, as he does, about how he can never find anything these days with all of us living on top of him, how we used to have a bit of peace and quiet before we came, she just laughs at him. Go on, Ivy said. It sounded more like, go on. You'll miss 'em when they've gone back home. You know you will, you grumpy old codger, you. Surprisingly, Uncle George didn't argue with her. He thought for a while and then he said, maybe I will. Maybe I will. I think he really meant it. Monday, May the 22nd. Barry's 11th birthday. Barry's mum had bought down his birthday cake. She'd saved up her ration coupons for weeks and weeks. I made it special, she said, and it was very special. Fruit cake with marzipan and royal icing with his name written on it in blue piping. Barry blew out the candles and closed his eyes to make his wish. Ivy had tears in her eyes and was trying not to cry. I think they were both wishing for the same thing, for the impossible, for Barry's father to be coming home. I'll miss Ivy when she goes tomorrow. I think we all will. She makes us smile. She turns off Uncle George's crackling radio and we talk. She laughs a lot and never pretends. I like that. She means everything she says. I like people who mean what they say. A bit like Barry, really. But I wish she wouldn't call me Ducky. Friday, May the 26th. Mum's not been well at all. She's been coughing a lot for days now. She's very pale. The doctor came yesterday and said she's to have bed rest until she stops her coughing. Grandfather said that I could stay off school and look after her for a day or two and help around the house with the cooking and cleaning. Barry said he'd stay home to help too, but Grandfather wouldn't hear of it and sent him off to school. Barry's not very pleased. He shouldn't grumble though. He has lots of days off school to help out on the farm, especially at lambing time. Mum had a letter from Dad today, so that cheered her up. He says he's somewhere in the south of England. He can't say where. Mum thinks he'll be going on the invasion when it happens. Maybe he'll meet up with Adie like we hoped he would. She keeps all his letters by her bed all the time, beside her photo. Oh, there's a good picture here. There we are. This afternoon I went for a walk on my own up the top of the hill. The larks were flying so high I could only hear them, but I couldn't see them. I didn't see the buzzards, 2 of them floating on the air over the trees, mewing. For a moment they sounded just like tips. Then I looked out to sea and saw the ships on the bay, dozens and dozens of them. I've never seen so many. It's the invasion, it must be. They're not gathered there for nothing, are they? That's one other thing I noticed today when I was up there. It wasn't only the sounds of the countryside I could hear about me. There was always a dull droning. I couldn't think what it was at first. Then I knew. It was the rumble of engines, jeeps, lorries, tanks. It was the rumble of war. I stood on the top of the hill with the wind blowing in my face, smelling the sea, and all I could think of was Adie. I said a prayer out loud, then I shouted it into the wind. Please, God, let him come and see me before he goes to war. Please, God, please. The 6th of June, 1944. We heard it on the radio. They've gone. The invasion began this morning. Adie's gone. Dad too, probably. D-Day, they're calling it. I don't know why. We all knew something was going on before we heard it on the radio. Before dawn, there was a distant thundering and roaring out at sea. Out of my window, I could see flashes all along the horizon, and I knew then it wasn't just another thunderstorm. There must have been thousands of guns firing at the same time. When Barry and me ran up over the fields after breakfast and looked out to sea, we saw all the ships had gone. It was no surprise when on the radio this evening it said that we had landed all along the French coast. Americans, British, Canadians, French, all sorts. Uncle George said we'd show the Germans now. He and Mum drank too much cider together and danced a jig around the kitchen to celebrate, and Uncle George's mad dog danced too, barking his silly head off. To start with, Barry and me sat and watched them. Everyone was laughing. There's a great picture of it there. Mum still coughs when she laughs, but she's much better. But in the end, we got up and danced with them. We did a conga round and round the table till we got all puffed out. Then Mum gave Barry and me 2 mint humbugs each and some lemonade to celebrate. Uncle George and Mum had a whiskey each, and we all clinked our glasses. To victory, Uncle George said. Grandfather came in from milking later, and Mum told him what we'd heard on the radio. He said nothing, but went to wash his hands in the sink. Then all he said was, "Poor beggars, poor beggars." Why is he saying that? Do you remember what we talked about D-Day? We mentioned it when we talked about assembly. It was a massive, massive, massive battle, and although it was very successful, lots of people died. Mum said when she came up to bed a few minutes ago that today was the beginning of the end of the war. Dad would be back soon, and then we could go back home to the farm and everything would be as it was before. But I don't think anything will ever be like it was again. Nothing stays the same, does it? Nothing is ever like it was, is it? All I can think about as I write is that Adie might be lying out there tonight on some French beach, dead or wounded, and I'll never know, because no one will ever tell me, because no one will ever know that we knew each other. I try closing my eyes and picturing him in my head. I try so hard to see him not dead and not wounded either. I try to see him alive and smiling at me. Whatever happens to him, wherever he is, that's how I'm going to remember him forever. I know I should be thinking of Dad too, and I am trying. I'm thinking of them both now and praying for them too. This is me writing now, Buoy. Do you remember this from the very beginning of the story? And it's written in italics, look, so you can tell it's somebody different. This is your grandma. I wrote lots more in my diary after this, but none of it's very interesting. And anyway, the mice got some of it years later when my diary books were sorted into a box up in the attic. Mice or squirrels, I can't be sure. There are only 2 more entries I wanted to show you because they finish the whole supremely amazing story, insofar as my story finishes at all. And if you don't understand quite what I mean by that, then you'll find out soon enough, but not until after the whole of the story has unfolded. Curiouser and curiouser. We'll leave that bit until tomorrow and then we'll read all the way to the end.